The following is a Kingfisher Media production.
How much do we really know about strangers? Is it fair to assume that they're different from us, or should we be searching for the things that we can relate to? We shouldn't look so hard at the things we don't understand or agree with. We should look at the things that make us think, this is what I like about you. I'm your host, AC Fisher. With me is
Alexis Erlin, and with us is Dave Warnock. Dave, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, good to be here.
I know we already kind of talked about it a few minutes ago, but I wanted to say happy Inauguration Day to all the U.S. citizens out there. I just had to put that out there. Very exciting day for us. Very emotional day. So that's something we already have in common that we kind of talked about. But tell us a little bit about yourself, Dave, and like who you are.
Well, I'm a former evangelical Christian slash pastor. I was an evangelical Christian for about 36, 37 years. Many of those years was involved as an associate pastor or a youth pastor, different flavors of pastoral ministry mixed into those years as an evangelical Christian. And about 10 years ago, maybe it's been about 11 years now, I kicked that to the curb, evangelical Christianity, and I went. I didn't pause at a more progressive strain of Christianity looking for a nicer version of God. I just let it all go, basically saying that if the biblical God that I'd given my life to was not true and real, then I really didn't have a need for any deity. So I began to identify as an agnostic atheist and didn't use the big A word for a long time because it's such an inflammatory word in a lot of people's. It can elicit a fairly strong response in a lot of people. But more so in the last couple of years, since I've become a little more activist in the atheist movement, I've begun to realize that me personally, and I wish more of us would use the word more, use it more, because it needs to be stripped of its negative connotations. It simply means I don't see any evidence for a God, and therefore I don't see a compelling reason to believe in one. That's all it means. It doesn't mean that I'm an evil person or mean or angry. It's just I don't see a need to claim a deity in my life. And so that's it. And then the last couple of years, almost 2 years now, I've been dealing with the ALS thing which we talked about before in other podcasts, and that has caused me to develop the thing called Dying Out Loud, which is a vehicle for me to talk about what's important in life in the face of a terminal illness as an atheist looking at death, as opposed to my former view as an evangelical Christian. And so I've spent a lot of time on podcasts and YouTube shows, and prior to COVID, traveling around speaking at different secular venues about the Dying Out Loud message, which is essentially about living out loud and grabbing the most out of life, because this is the one life we have.
Right. Thanks, Dave.
Summary of me.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great summary. I mean, two things that come immediately to the forefront of my mind when you talk about a departure from a lifetime of faith, and then also a diagnosis with ALS. I mean, these are two things that would really prompt any person to take a complete inventory of life and consider every detail of it, like not just the things that you were on the fence about before, but the things that you were sure were true. Even those have to be looked at.
Absolutely. In fact, there's a couple of phrases that are used in the Dying Out Loud stuff, the carpe, the fucking diem. And then I've also talked a lot about the reality that we don't live a life. We live a life of moments. In a quote that I've adopted is, we do not remember days, we remember moments. And that's true in that life is comprised of singular moments that oftentimes are not related to one another. Whereas as a Christian, everything had to fit together into some great big plan and purpose that God had for us. And it made life very complicated and confusing oftentimes. If a friend died of cancer, you had to figure out, what is God in this? What is God saying? What is God doing? If I get diagnosed with a terminal illness, where is God in this? What's God saying? What's God doing? What's God's will? Is he going to heal me? Does he have a higher purpose for me? Is he calling me home? All of that tends to filter through your brain and make everything a lot more complicated than it needs to be. It's just simply life. Life happens. Shit happens. Yeah. Good stuff, bad stuff. And my response to that needs to be, and mine is, where are the moments? Where can I find the moments? What are the moments that I can glean from these days that are passing through my life? And how do I make sure that I don't miss the moments? Because that's what happens. Life happens. Life comes at you fast, as they say. And if we're not careful, we miss the moments that are contained therein. And so that's kind of been my ideology for several years. And then when I got the diagnosis 2 years ago, I just amplified that. I magnified that. I was already thinking about, that carpe the fucking diem was the way to live. And then I got this diagnosis, which left me a little bit discombobulated in the sense that I don't know how long I have here. It could be a year, it could be 2 years. How quickly will I degenerate? All those things. So I just kind of mashed the accelerator down and said, I got to get these moments as fast as I can.
What's been your best moment so far?
My
same question. Yeah. What's been your best moment? What's been your best moment?
Oh,
so far?
Gosh. I can't remember when it was we talked last, but, COVID really threw a wrench into things because we were traveling, doing a lot of stuff on the road, and we had plans to go to Europe and UK and lots of different speaking engagements over there and meeting people, and all that got scrambled. An overall moment that continues to be a best moment is the partnership with my girl Bevan. That came after the diagnosis. We started dating right after that, and it's been almost a couple years now. And we've had some rough times in that, but overall it's been a wonderful thing and continues to be. I mean, I'm here in Charlotte with her now, and we've shared some of those moments. Even post-COVID, we made a decision to do some things. We went to the Grand Canyon and did a lot of out west traveling and saw some national parks and things, and took a helicopter ride over the Grand Canyon, which was just fucking amazing.
I saw the photos. They were great.
I tell everyone, if you're going to get to the Grand Canyon, spend the extra bucks and do the helicopter. You can't believe what it's like. You just can't believe it. I mean, you can stand on the edge of it and see all of the viewpoints they have, but when you go over it, you see the enormity of it. And to imagine that that's only 6,000 years old, that all that happened to this.
Yeah, only 6,000. Yeah.
And then shortly after that, we did another bucket list thing. I jumped out of an airplane to live to tell about it. We did.
Yeah, I saw that too.
She had done the skydiving before, but I'd never done that. And that was a cool moment too, because when we're flying, you're tandem. I got this dude on my back, and we chatted a bit before we went up, but I didn't tell him I had ALS. But as I'm flying through the air, they want you to wave at the cameraman and high five them. I can't get my arms to move. They're just flapping at my side like a fin on a fish, and I cannot get them up. And I'm just, oh. And so when the chute opened and we're floating, I told him, I said, listen, dude, in case you're wondering why I look so weird, I got ALS. That's the thing. And man, he said, oh, dude. He said, I have a friend who died from ALS. I understand. He said, I'm going to give you the ride of your life.
Oh, awesome. That must have been therapeutic for the both of you, I think.
It was a really cool moment.
That was awesome.
And he, we floated a little extra and he said, here, pull the thing and guide it. And it was more than he does with other people. And he wanted to make it special.
you feel like obviously you have a connection with this person now, like up here, in your mind.
Yeah.
That's a moment. He's a part of one of your moments.
Yeah. We got down to the ground and we told everyone, because they're picking us up in a cart, and Bevan was she had landed before me, and we all got in the cart and we told everybody, and everybody was high-fiving, and it was just it made everybody's experience that much more special, which was cool. I didn't see that coming. And so I've just learned to just be open about it, and just this is me, this is who I am, this is what, we'll have people over working at the house, and I'll just tell them, hey dude, I would help you pick that up, but I can't because my arms don't work and I have ALS, and I don't know, I don't do it to get anybody's sympathy. I just kind of want to be real with people. And I think it connects you with them in a different way.
Thank you for listening to What I Like About You. Please remember to like, follow, and share.
Do you feel like your openness about your diagnosis has allowed you to observe more goodness in the people around you than maybe you had opportunity to observe before?
I think so. I think people, they do respond to you differently and treat you differently when they know that you have a terminal disease. And most people, our ex-president accepted, most people, I can't not get a dig in here.
It's okay.
He has traumatized us for 4 fucking years. I'm gonna, come on. Most people want to be good and are good inside. And that's the thing, I love the attitude about this new show that you're doing, because it's true. Most people are looking for the good. They want the best for their fellow friend, neighbor, fellow American, family member. We are all divided. We're divided more than we've ever been. I mean, Trump has incited division. He has caused us to find the worst in our neighbor and to amplify that. And he's always pushing against. He couldn't ever say, I'm proud of what we did. I did this better than anyone else. No one else could have done this. It's just always celebrating our division and causing division. Whereas Biden from the get-go today we're going to find what unites us. We're a United States. We're more alike than we are different. And let's find those similarities. Let's find what unites us, and let's don't focus on how we're different. And that's the only hope for us as a country, as family, as humans. We are more alike than we're different. We just have to find those similarities and amplify and magnify them.
So I think we've been thinking a lot about what unifies us so far today. I've got a potentially divisive question to ask you. And this is one of those questions that I've seen almost cause people to come to blows.
Yeah.
But I'll ask it at the risk of the peace here today. Cats or dogs, Dave?
I can't talk to you anymore. Bye. Well, I love dogs. I would love cats, but they don't love me because I'm allergic to them. So
yeah, me too.
That's on them. That's on them.
Yeah. There we go.
Not my problem, is it, Alexis?
Yeah. Right.
I've often said that I can't develop any real affection for cats because it takes almost all of my energy trying to relate to the women in my life. Trying to relate to one more fickle animal just isn't something I got the energy for.
Oh, did you just compare women to fickle animals? Oh,
like in our worst state, absolutely, Dave. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Like I will be the first to admit that. Yes.
I feel like I should just mute my microphone and shut up now.
Yeah, no.
No,
be very feline.
Cats just kind of have I don't give a fuck attitude, you know.
Yeah. Just kind of why I like them.
Put some food out and leave me alone, would you please?
Yeah.
I admire that, but I kind of have trouble warming up to it at the same time.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are more alike than cats than we realize.
Yeah. But on the flip side, sometimes dogs can be just annoyingly needy. Like, feed me, pet me, feed me, pet me, do this, do this.
No, but seriously, I mean, people are like
that
too. Yeah, people are like that too. I mean, it's funny you ask a simple question like cats or dogs, but it's like, yeah, there's all kinds of people in the world. What do you prefer? And how do we tolerate, how do we, I don't know, deal with all of these people in our lives who aren't like us or who are too like us?
Well, the challenge we've got now post-Trump, and this is, I don't mean to talk about it much but it's so in our forefront right now because of today. Mm-hmm. Just a monumental day.
Yeah.
He really did divide. I mean, he went out of his way to divide, and it caused division. I know people. My family, my brothers and mom, they're all Trumpers in East Texas, and I think a couple of my kids are, and my son and his wife are very much aligned with my thinking. But used to, you could disagree and still maintain civility. I mean, I looked at the inauguration today and the former presidents that were there, Bush and Clinton and Obama, and Carter would have been there, but they broke his name out. You got Democrats, you got Republicans. There are differences of opinion, different ways that they want to govern, different things that they prioritize, but they got along. And it's like this fraternity almost of brothers. You see them, they're kind of chatting with each other, and they're not just mortal enemies. Can you imagine Donald Trump in that scenario? Can you imagine him hanging out with those guys?
Right.
He's got it in him. And that's why he wasn't there today. He can't accept losing. He can't be gracious. He can't be kind. It's not in him. It's not who he is. He can't summon it forth. And I do believe that that's the signs of a very, very broken person. I believe he's very broken. Everything I've read about him indicates that he's just came from a very dysfunctional, unloving family. And of course, he can't give you what he doesn't have. And that's not his fault. But he never should have been president. He shouldn't be mayor of a town of 50 people, much less president of the United States of America. So what that says to me that's more alarming is that we've got some big problems in this country, that many people think he's someone that should lead us. That's the problem. So how do I bridge that gap with my family members who still love Donald Trump and think he's awesome and want him to be president and think that God wants him there because they're all Christians and they think he's anointed by God to be King Donald. How do I bridge that gap with them? That's what I'm asking you guys.
I could ask you the same question.
I don't have a clue.
No, this is something we bump up against all the time.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know how to talk to them about this stuff.
It's honestly, it's off the table for my mother and I can't do it. I mean,
I'm a little bit more stubborn than that, I guess.
I want to ask my evangelical pastor brother, you think that God's anointed this guy who's demonstrably the least Christian president we've ever seen? I mean, morally and ethically and every other way you can imagine. He doesn't even know how to hold a Bible, much less read one. Brother, my pastor brother, explain this to me, please, because I don't understand. And I look back on my evangelical past, and I shudder to think how I would have handled Trump as an evangelical Christian. I really don't know the answer to that. I have to think that I would not have been able to embrace him because I just can't imagine me feeling like he was in any way okay. What about you?
I don't know if I grew up. Go ahead, AC.
No, just I wanted to back up a little bit because I think that your question, like, how do we bridge that gap? Like, that's a powerful question. And I think in this time where we're trying to pick up the pieces of 4 years of intentional propaganda trying to convince us that it's us versus them, no matter how friendly some of us are, I think on some level we've bought into the propaganda.
Yeah.
And we talked to a very philosophical guest a few days ago, Daniel Levin. And he brought up a point that kind of, it caught me off guard. I'd always thought, people commonly look at love and hate as polar opposites. I've never seen it that way. I've always thought love and hate are on one end of the spectrum and apathy is on the other end.
I agree with that. Yeah.
And he kind of disagreed with me on that. And it's given me a lot of pause for thought, because he said the opposite of love is not apathy. The opposite of love is fear. And I think that all this division that we're seeing play out and have seen played out over the last 4 years, it's been fear has been the biggest tool in Trump's arsenal, and the biggest tool in his followers' arsenal. So I think as far as how to bridge the gap, that fear that we've been bludgeoned with really offers the biggest clue. Like, how do we address that fear? Is there some sort of common ground underneath the fear that allows us all to similarly view the world? And this is the part I struggle with. Like, I always want to try to find the common ground in a conflict, but as we all know, sometimes looking for that common ground does seem to escalate the conflict sometimes.
You are listening to What I Like About You. Please remember to like, follow, and share.
Like, back to what Dave was saying, what would that have been like if I had been an evangelical still and Trump was my president? I was thinking about how scared I was growing up, just being raised in a Christian environment, how scared I was of hell and demons and things like that. Fear is definitely a motivator to do whatever you feel that you need to do to survive, whether that fear is actually valid or not. It eats people. It eats them on the inside, and it grows, and you can't just like shirk it off. I mean, it's taken me years, to kind of get over some of the fears that I've had. So when someone is afraid, that's when they start, becoming angry, and there's a lot of pushback. So on the other, on the other end of things, what do you think we should do with people who we know are like afraid, and this is why they do these things? How do we learn to alleviate fears and just, learn how to support each other, even though we are on opposite sides of our beliefs?
Well, I think what we're all groping for here is, how do we bridge the gap? We were talking about fear, love, hate, apathy.
Mm-hmm.
Trump did run on a candidacy of fear, to make us fear one another and to fear the other. The immigrants are going to come take our jobs, so we need to build a wall. He's clearly a racist, and that's always playing on a hate that stems from a fear of them. We don't understand them because they're different, so we're afraid of them. And that comes out in hate, anger, and violence. And so the only way I know how to address fear is to ask someone, what is it you're afraid of? I've dealt with this some in the dying out loud thing, and talking about death and people's fear of death. I've had a lot of questions about people, and I've had people approach me individually and send me messages and things about their paralysis and their fear of dying, and how do I approach that, and how do I not be afraid of it, because I'm really not. And the way that I've been able to get through to some of them is to break it down. What is it you're afraid of specifically? Let's don't use the word death or dying. Let's tear that apart. What does that mean? And when they stop to think about it in those terms, it takes a little bit of the biggest thing we fear is the unknown, whether it's another person and what we don't know about them, or what happens when we die. And when I ask them, what do you think it's going to be like when you're dead? They usually, if they stop to think about it, they realize, I won't be aware of anything. It'll be like before I was born. Well, how were you then?
Yeah.
I was okay.
Yeah. I don't remember any pain.
Yeah. So when you think about it and you stop and analyze it, it kind of takes the the mystery away from it and diffuses the fear a little bit. I think if I could talk to my evangelical friends and say, tell me what you're afraid of with Joe Biden. What do you think he's going to do to you? What do you think the evil Democrats are going to do, the liberals, the libtards? What is it that all these phrases you use, what do they mean to you? Help me understand why you're afraid. If we can have those conversations with civility and compassion, then we can help some people come to better understandings of what's real. The problem we're dealing with here, though, and we're talking about the political divide here, is they're operating with different facts than we are. Mm-hmm. You can't agree on what's true.
Right.
Then you really don't have much way to converse.
Right.
That's also true. That's also true with the divide in religion. When I talk to my religious friends and they want to convince me that this, and this is true, and I ask them to show me the evidence for that, and they can't. They've got one version of what's true, and I've got another. So we don't have much commonality there.
Right. And a lot of them don't believe in science, so they're not going to do the research themselves.
Yeah.
You know, because they believe that the information that they're given is somehow God ordained.
So
and
I really don't have as many answers as I would like to have.
Yeah.
It's a real challenge.
I spent a good amount of time over the last year or so talking to a pro-Trump, ultra right-wing evangelical Christian who's close to somebody who's close to me. Mm-hmm. And at first, I really felt like I was sitting across from a two-headed monster. Like, there's no chance I'm ever going to have anything in common with this woman. She is just straight up nuts. But yeah, just to let you in on the secret here, Dave, the reason that Alexis is laughing is I'm talking about her mother. But what I learned,
like this.
Is she that far right? I mean, she's QAnon kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. Hillary's selling baby parts in the basement of an ice cream parlor.
So you had conversations with her.
Oh yeah,
what was that like?
Regular
he can handle it. I can't.
What was that like?
Infuriating at the beginning, to be honest, because I couldn't identify any common ground. And of course, I'm trying really, really hard not to carry secondhand hurts into the conversation with me, because here is a person that has caused a lot of damage to somebody that I care very deeply for. But at the same time, she hasn't done anything directly to me, and I'm trying to keep that in mind.
Right.
You know, but as I started conversing with her and I started looking through the insanity that was hitting me in the face, I started noticing that there were a lot of philosophical similarities between her and I. The things that we actually wanted out of life were the same things.
Right.
We had all of the same questions. We arrived at drastically different conclusions, but I mean, even the process that we went through to reach the answers up until a certain point were very similar. So I realized that a lot of these people probably are like that. They want the same things out of life that I do. You know, like we sort of like, we look at the world around us. We're identifying all the same stuff. Mm-hmm. Maybe we're looking through slightly different lenses at times, but you know, underneath it all, it's like, I wasn't dealing with a two-headed monster for very long. I mean, it took me very little time to realize that, okay, this woman, first of all, isn't an abuser. She's a victim. She's not stupid. She's misinformed. She's not a bigot. She's just horribly ignorant and has been overloaded with fear.
Yeah.
And how would any of us react in that environment? I mean, if I'm going to be honest, I used to be that person back in my years in the church. You know, and I think, how would I have like responded to a Trump presidency? Well, I don't have to go very far. I mean, Bush was president, W that is, when I was very much involved in the church, and there was nothing he could do that would make him so stupid or so immoral that I would stop supporting him blindly, even as a Canadian, just because he stood for one thing that I stood for, you know, which was, you know, like being an anti-lifer or an anti-choicer, I should say.
Right. Pro-life, yeah.
Yeah, pro-life, anti-choice. You know, it's like,
unless you're actually living, then we want to execute you. But go on.
Yeah, it's like that's all it took. It's just like that one singular issue blinded me to everything else, because that one singular issue was a big ticket item for me. How people of color were treated, which again is really stupid because I am a person of color, but I never saw any of the ill effects of that type of presidency. I was insulated because I lived in Canada. The color of my skin was not a problem. Mm-hmm. So for a president to sort of take a shit on people of color, not a big deal. You want to take a shit on people with different sexual orientations, again, not a big deal. It doesn't affect me.
Right.
But saving those babies,
that affected me. Well, what is it? You said she's loaded with fear. Could you ever identify what's she afraid of?
Some questions really aren't very easy to explore, but I think the conversation still needs to be had. Next time we continue our conversation with Dave Warnock and continue to explore what's going on with the other side of the conversation. How do we connect with these people that seem determined to tear down everything that we try to build up?